What's up everyone, John the Morgile here. We're going to do a video response today to National Geographic video, Flat Earth versus Round Earth. So let's get right on into it.
You'd think that with the beautiful photographs that we have of our round blue planet, it would convince any doubters. But there are still some who insist that the world is flat.
Don't you just love his verbiage there? Still some who insist that the world is flat. Like as if we never went to school, we were never taught about the ball earth theory. We just woke up from under some rock this morning and thought the earth was flat. I mean, don't you just love the subtle verbiage where they're taking subconscious jabs at flat earthers that we're ignorant, we don't know anything about science, we've never even heard about the ball earth. Just love that slick verbiage that they put in there.
Correspondent Mariana Van Zella discovers more about this fast-growing movement in California.
That's the famous blue marble that everybody's seen. But let me tell you something about that famous shot. It's not a photo at all, man. It was made in Photoshop. Cause there ain't no photographs, but somebody tell me why. They're all just photographs.
I'm Mariana Van Zeller, and I'm in Southern California to look into a growing movement in America. People who claim the Earth is flat. They call themselves the Flat Earthers, and we're here to try to understand what's behind this unconventional view and how it can affect the rest of us.
Yeah, let's see what's behind this unconventional view. So I'm sure that this woman is going to review some of the very compelling proofs and bits of natural, observable, repeatable evidence that clearly demonstrate the Earth to be a static plane as opposed to a spinning ball. I'm gonna hold my breath now.
So what's happening here today? Why are you here?
This matters to me. Flat Earth shows you that you are not a mistake and you were created, and so you have meaning and you matter to the world. You know? We're not monkeys floating through space on a ball as an accident.
So right off the bat, instead of looking into some of the world full of evidence that clearly proves the Earth to be a plane and not in motion, they go into the hypothetical ramifications or the philosophical ramifications of this paradigm shift. And again, that's sort of backwards in terms of how people arrive at the conclusion of flat Earth. You have to review the evidence first. The evidence could be anything from the utter lack of motion as proven by airline flights, the utter lack of curvature as proven by long-distance landscape photography or infrared photography. No, they don't look into any of that. They look into the philosophical ramifications as opposed to the proof, and that really only achieves one thing. It makes us appear to be kooks, which is exactly, in my opinion, what this piece is going for. And of course, that isn't intended as a jab at this nice young lady. Nothing at all against her. She's speaking her mind, but what I'm saying is the way that they edit these hit piece videos on the mainstream media. They're not taking the topic seriously. They're never going to review the actual evidence. They just want to make fun at the silly flat earthers without doing any sort of actual investigation into the topic or into the meat of the topic.
It's not testable, it's not measurable, it's not provable, it's not real.
Right. How old are you guys, just out of curiosity?
27.
Do you think it's a growing movement?
Yes. And we're networking, we're getting stronger, people are realizing it, it's coming out in the media, you're hearing the term flat earth, it's becoming more normal, people are more open-minded to it.
He's not wrong. A recent survey of Americans found that 2% believe the earth is flat. For the U.S. population as a whole, that works out to be over 6.5 million people.
I love how they play the sad and depressing music in the background as they explain how 6.5 million people in the U.S. know the Earth is flat. It is such a subliminal attack or a subliminal affront on this movement. And, I also must note that instead of reviewing any of the evidence that proves the Earth to be flat and stationary, they're going into the sociological parameters of the movement itself. And of course, that is not how this sort of investigation is achieved. In order to realize flat Earth, you must conduct a scientific, geometric, physical investigation of the Earth. not a sociological investigation of the people in the movement. But what would you expect from National Geographic?
Even high-profile artists and athletes are getting on board.
Flat.
So I want to try to find Mark Sargent, who's one of the leaders of the Flat Earth community.
Nice to see you, man. No, we met at Pasadena.
Mark used to design video games and run software trainings. Now, he devotes himself full-time to promoting the Flat Earth.
Absolutely.
Hi.
Hi.
I see with all the attention that you must be Mark Sargent.
I am Mark Sargent.
Thanks for meeting us here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me, what is this movement all about?
This movement is about changing the world, literally. You think for the longest time that you live here. But what if it wasn't this? What if this was just the illusion?
Pontius model.
Yeah, we're gonna open this thing up. And the reality looked something like this. In a nutshell, you have the North Pole at the center, the continents splayed out organically on the sides. Antarctica is stretched around the entire outer edge like an ice wall. The sun and the moon are very, very small, and the stars are just lights in the sky. A giant planetarium, which means it was built by somebody. Someone bigger than us, someone better than us.
Do you think it was a god?
Not my place to say.
Your belief in the Earth being flat flies in the face of
Hundreds of years.
of evidence, of scientific evidence that the world is round. Not only that, but we have satellite imagery. We have photos from space that
Yes.
prove that the Earth is round.
Right. And nobody here believes any of that anymore.
Okay, so in response to a couple of those items, the first thing that she asked him is, do you think it was a god? She says, your belief in the Earth being flat flies in the face of hundreds of years of scientific evidence. Not only that, we have satellite imagery, photos from space, and, not to pick apart what Mark Sargent said, but, to just say that nobody here believes any of that is not really an answer to those questions, I don't think. What we believe has nothing to do with this. The evidence, the physical, geometrical evidence of the Earth not having curvature, not being in motion, is what ultimately leads people to realize that the Earth is flat. Hundreds of years of scientific evidence is a sham. That's baloney. There's hundreds of years possibly of indoctrination and of tricking toddlers into believing that the Earth is a spinning ball, but that's it. Satellite imagery, as a multiple-year flat Earth proponent, we realize that satellites don't exist. Sure, we have high-altitude flight capability, high-altitude weather balloons, but in terms of satellites orbiting the Earth at hundreds or even thousands of miles in altitude, that's just baloney. I think the biggest piece of evidence against satellites is the fact that we can often see with the naked eye what are purported to be satellites in space. And so we'll take the biggest and one of the nearest examples, the ISS, the International Space Station. They claim that that's about 250 miles in altitude, and yet we can see it with the naked eye. Well, that right there debunks the notion that the ISS or the ISS is a football field-sized object some 250 miles in altitude. The limit to angular size in our vision dictates that an object removed, 250 miles from your vision, that object being the size of a football field, would be angularly apparently too small to see. So the fact that we can see the ISS with the naked eye debunks the claim that it is a football field-sized object some 250 miles in altitude. And NASA, she said photos from space. NASA is a liar. They were set up as a psychological operation by no less than Nazis. Look into Werner von Braun and the project Operation Paperclip. NASA was founded by Nazis as a psychological operation on the world. And, frankly, Flat Earth has nothing to do, in my opinion, nothing to do with belief, nothing to do with what anyone believes. It has to do with what we can actually measure. And, again, if you measure the Earth for curvature, there is no curvature. If you measure the Earth for axial rotation, there is no axial rotation, there is no orbital motion, and that is why we are flat earthers, I think. So again, not to armchair quarterback what Mark Sargent said on this interview, but, well, let's see what happens.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike, it really is.
So you don't believe that people traveled in space?
No. Oh, it's much worse than you know.
Okay.
Meaning, the only reason NASA was founded in 1958 was to keep this thing under wraps as best they could.
Why? Why?
Think of the shock waves. If all of a sudden you're telling a civilization that this model, this isn't it anymore, Flat Earth is the last conspiracy anyone ever looks at.
That's true, very true, agreed. What I would say, for whatever it's worth, is that the motive for this deception is to put humankind in a position of insignificance. If the world is a relative speck of dust in the infinite cosmos of nothingness, in the infinite vacuum of space, then what does that make humanity? Well, it makes us even less significant than the Earth. In an infinite universe, we could disappear today or tomorrow or right this second, and in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't change a thing. However, in reality, it appears that the Earth is all that there is. The physical plane of existence is everything in the universe, and space is not an infinite void of nothingness. So, the powers which ought not be want us in a very specific mindset, and that mindset is conducive to capitalist society, where the most important thing to people is those monopoly monies, right? And so it appears to me that the entire reason for this deception is to put humanity in that specific mindset of defeatism, nihilism, and low self-esteem, basically.
Mark and his fellow flat earthers seem to be pretty convinced that the Earth is flat and that we've all been lied to for all these years. But I'm interested in knowing what kind of impact this might have, not only for science, but for society at large. So we're heading to meet with an astrophysicist that we hope can answer some of these questions.
Yeah, let's go query a person who has spent their entire life being deeply indoctrinated into ball Earth and infinite space theory, and see if they can put the cat back into the bag, as it were, on this topic.
The universe began about 14 billion years ago, an event that we call the Big Bang.
Yeah, sure it was. Sure it was. And where is your scientific evidence for that claim? First of all, in order for the Big Bang Theory to be correct, the Earth would have to be a spinning ball in outer space. The entire theory hinges on that simple fact. And simply put, there's no curvature to the Earth, and it's clearly not in motion, demonstrably not. And so this entire Big Bang origin theory is just absolute hogwash, conjecture, and theory.
James Bullock is a professor of physics and astronomy at the University of California, Irvine. He specializes in how galaxies form.
Did you ever think a few years ago that you'd be having this discussion for National Geographic?
It's frankly shocking. We've known for 2,000 years, based on observations you can make with your own eyes, that the world is round.
But they have all the evidence right in front of them, and they still choose not to believe in it.
Wow, the irony of that statement is absolutely palpable. Frankly, the exact same thing can and should be said about these globe Earth believers. The evidence is clear. Any physical test that you perform to show whether or not the Earth has curvature comes back nil. The curvature doesn't exist over even hundreds of miles of viewable horizon. Same thing goes for the purported motion of the Earth, either axial rotation at over 1,000 miles an hour, well faster than the speed of sound at the equator, and over 66,000 miles an hour in terms of the alleged orbital velocity. Orbital velocities are allegedly curved paths which means although the Earth is allegedly going at a consistent speed around this orbit, it would necessarily constantly be accelerating, and that would be angular acceleration manifest as centrifugal force. And there is no measurable data to suggest either axial rotation or orbital motion exist. And so the globe-Earth theory hinges upon this motion existing. The fact that it does not exist debunks the globe-Earth theory. It doesn't matter what you think in terms of what the motive is or who is responsible for this deception. It doesn't matter. The evidence is clear. And so the people that are denying the evidence are the very globe-Earth believers, not the flat earthers. Nat Geo has their head so far up their ass, the little lump in their throat is their nose.
You know, who knows what motivates people from the inside to believe these things? But science is important. Science is valuable. Science saves lives, it makes our lives better and more comfortable, and it enriches us intellectually.
Everything that guy just said is bullshit. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinny. Well said. Indeed, everything that guy just said was bull. Science is none of those things. Science is a process to discern the truth through process of elimination. Technology could probably be said to save lives and better, humankind and improve our lives. But really, science is supposed to be a unbiased process of elimination, period.
And to question what scientists are saying and suggest that they're part of some massive international global conspiracy, it's really scary.
The thing is nobody is actually claiming that. The problem is that scientists were indoctrinated in ball earth theory since they were toddlers just like everyone else. They're not part of some grand conspiracy. They were tricked since before they were able to logically argue against the globe earth fallacies. We were all forced to believe in the globe, whether you're a scientist or completely ignorant of science, from kindergarten through 12, through college, and especially if you specialize in astrophysics or theoretical physics, you are indoctrinated in the lies, but you're not part of any conspiracy. And I would even say that most of the people that work for NASA, sans the astronauts, are not part of any conspiracy. Sure, there is a conspiracy here, but no, the scientists are not scheming to trick people into believing in a globe. They were taught in the globe earth beliefs as little children, and they continue teaching those fallacious beliefs to their students as well. It is a vicious cycle, but there is no sort of angst or underhandedness going on for most scientists, other than the fact that they were tricked as little kids. It's sad, really.
Are they a threat to the work that you do as a scientist?
If, say, governments stop funding science because of some kind of anti-science, anti-intellectual feedback they're getting from the populace, that's when it really starts getting dangerous for our civilization.
The thing is, flat earthers are not anti-science. Flat earthers are pro-science, probably the most staunch proponents for the scientific method or the zetetic process out there, the flat earthers. The problem is scientists, especially theoretical physicists, are anti-science because, again, the basic raw data, geometrical data, and physical data shows conclusively that the Earth has no curvature and is not in motion. So any belief that someone harbors about the Earth being a sphere spinning around in space is unfounded and unscientific. Flat earthers are the pro-science people, and it is the theorists and the theoretical physicists who are indeed anti-science. Just saying.
And as the war on science heats up, some Americans are fighting back.
What, you mean your war on science? Is that what you're referring to?
We're heading to the largest lake in California to meet the Independent Investigations Group, which is a group that essentially debunks paranormal claims. And they want to do a round Earth test, basically a test that will prove that the Earth is not flat, but that it is round. So by definition, they are anti-science because they are going into the test with a preconceived notion that they want to verify. Whatever happened to the blind controls of science?
should they not be going into this test to either prove curvature or prove there is no curvature? Why would they go into the test with a preconceived notion that the Earth is a globe in order to prove that preconceived notion? And that's the problem with modern science, is they are not objective, they are not skeptical of their own bias or beliefs. They go into an experiment wanting to show a certain bias or a certain viewpoint and basically disregard any data that disagrees with their viewpoint and only accept and only scrutinize data that agrees with their viewpoint. That is the opposite of science, and I'm glad that they made that point for me, because it really does go to show that what people believe to be science anymore is in fact anti-science or anti-logic.
Let's go. We're ready to launch. You ready, Craig?
James, how are you?
Okay.
Okay, so what's happening here right now?
Okay, this is the boat-based target. It's horizontal stripes. We're going to launch a small boat out into the water here with a striped target. Come on, Betty! And as it gets farther and farther out, you'll start to lose the stripes.
One way that Aristotle proved 2,000 years ago that the Earth is a sphere was with a boat test, very similar to this one. As a boat approaches the horizon, it appears to slowly dip down into the water before disappearing completely. That's got everything to do with the curvature of the Earth. If the planet was flat, the entire boat would remain visible.
Wow, look at Nat Geo go. They are regurgitating the ball Earth lies and misunderstandings that we're all very familiar with. The ships appear to drop below the horizon is an optical phenomenon. It has to do with perspective and a bit of refraction. As you can see here, the ship's sitting on the horizon. When you zoom in on it with a zoom camera, you can see basically the entire ship. And when you zoom out, the ship appears to disappear or really merge with the vanishing point or merge with the horizon. That's an optical phenomenon. It is not any sort of proof of physical curvature. And the thing is, if Nat Geo did any degree of homework, they would realize that flat earthers have been debunking this point really since day one. So what this proves to me is that Nat Geo has done basically no research. They're just repeating what everyone's already heard, what everyone already knows, and they're failing to look at this any more deeply than believe the Earth is a ball, look for confirmation that the Earth is a ball, disregard any other possible explanation for that confirmation, and then call that proof of the Earth's sphericity or curvature. Absolutely ridiculous, absolute anti-science.
So it'll be a very visual depiction of the curvature of the Earth.
And what's really interesting is that some of the flat earthers, including Mark Sargent, are actually going to be here for this test. They want to see it for themselves. What do you think is going to happen here today?
I appreciate a scientific group coming out and trying to do this test. Great. Appreciate the enthusiasm. But cannot work.
Can it work?
I'm ready. Bring it up.
So it's starting?
Yeah.
Okay, so the test is starting. It's starting right now.
At first, all the stripes are clearly visible. But sure enough, as the boat reaches the horizon, the stripes begin to disappear one by one.
It's pretty amazing. You can actually see it pretty clearly with this camera here. And you see that the red stripe that was at the bottom has completely disappeared, and it's now getting closer to sort of the middle green stripe, that is.
So we've lost about 1.5 stripes.
Right.
Okay, Nat Geo, let's take a lesson in perspective. As vertical lines gain distance from your perspective, they will apparently diminish in angular size. When those vertical lines get beyond the apparent horizon point, they will diminish in angular size more swiftly when far removed from your line of sight when compared to the portion of the vertical line that is in line with your line of sight. The optical horizon acts as a barrier to your line of sight, and so you do get the optical illusion that objects are dropping below the horizon, but this is very much an operation of perspective, coupled with atmospheric refraction, which dictates any light that is traveling parallel to the ground will apparently drop. It will refract downward or bend downward. So this ridiculous test proves nothing but perspective and refraction. Period. End of story. And of course, Nat Geo is going to cherry pick this argument because they know that it does a very good job of creating the illusion of curvature, but proves nothing but something that we already know, and that is we see in perspective and light refracts down towards the ground when traveling parallel to the ground or parallel to the density gradient of the atmosphere. And that's it.
So this can only happen why?
Because of the curvature of the Earth.
So these scientists, or rather lientists, are going to claim that this can only happen due to the curvature of the Earth, when it would indeed be expected to happen upon a plane, especially when you have an atmosphere or a density gradient within that atmosphere, where the higher density gases are forced towards the lower portion, and is a gradient of lessening density gases proportionally with altitude. So the exact same thing should indeed be expected to happen upon a planar surface with atmosphere, and this test proves nothing but the confirmation bias of the testers.
So here's what we were shooting.
But Mark Sargent and the other flat earthers have a very different interpretation of the results.
So you don't think that what we're seeing is actually real? You think it's because of heat?
Absolutely heat.
Does anyone here in flat Earth believe it's a globe? Still flat. No, it's anyone? Raise a hand. It's not a pear either.
And, I'm sorry, but science is not a consensus of beliefs either. Clearly, we understand that objects appear to merge with the horizon as they gain distance from the observer, and we also know that refraction occurs. And so this is indeed an optical illusion caused by the shape of our eye, the nature of reality, and refraction of light. And that's it.
This demonstration, it doesn't change anything for you.
Lord, no.
Mark, do you really believe this stuff? Tell me the truth. I'm serious.
I absolutely 100% believe we are not on a globe. We are part of a giant studio set. All the world's a stage, and you're on it.
I still don't understand, though. Like, who's gaining from all this, from this large conspiracy?
The highest authority, higher than presidents, the super rich, people that are behind the scenes. Remember, the first rule of power is stay hidden.
That's true. And, I would also add that it is not our place to say the motive. The fact of the matter is the Earth clearly, demonstrably doesn't have curvature, clearly, demonstrably is not in motion. These sort of ships over the horizon tests prove nothing other than the nature of our eye, perspective, and refraction again. And so it is not our place to say what the motive is. This deception was put into motion long before any of us were even born. And so we can guess at the motivations, but really that is secondary to the actual evidence. And, for Nat Geo to suggest that flat earthers had never heard of this ships over the horizon phenomenon is absolutely an assault on our integrity, on our intelligence, and our research. This is one of the very first things that any current flat earther has looked into, is the ships over the horizon thing. I mean, we learned about this in kindergarten, and yet Nat Geo is going to reproduce this so-called experiment where they assume that light always travels in straight lines, which is malarkey, and they assume that objects do not diminish in angular size proportionally with distance. That is just absolute ignorance on their part, a slap in the face to the scientific progress of flat Earth, and really just an insult to our intelligence.
So this is for me where I think it gets really dangerous, because we're going back into the dark ages, right? You're essentially perpetuating ignorance by denying science.
Yeah, right back at you, lady. Right back at you, let me tell you.
There's a real life implication in all of this.
Science has had its chance, and they aren't putting up a defense. I think that Flat Earth could potentially usher in a new golden age, or it could usher in an age of chaos.
It's easy to dismiss this as just a silly theory and unimportant. But the problem is that it's a growing movement in America. More and more young people seem to believe that the world is flat.
Right, but it is not a belief. The world is actually flat and motionless. That's what these people don't seem to understand. They believe that the world is a spinning ball in spite of all of the evidence to the contrary.
And, you know, it's more than just distrusting government. It's this notion that thousands of years of empirical scientific evidence is now being dismissed as a mere conspiracy. And that's where I think it really starts getting dangerous.
Yes, well, I would say that your mindset is, in fact, the dangerous one because you refuse to look at evidence. You look at ships over the horizon as your flagship cornerstone piece of evidence when it is shown that this is merely due to perspective and refraction. Again, it's sort of like beating a dead horse here, but that is like the only thing that Nat Geo could review is that one flimsy piece of circumstantial evidence with their confirmation bias and nothing else.
For all of us.
Okay guys, that concludes today's video. Thanks so much for watching. Listen, you guys, I'm really up against it. I've got all of my bills coming due, everything sort of crashing in around me. As many of you know, I was locked up through Christmas and New Year's this year, and I've been trying my best to bounce back and dig myself out of one hell of a hole. But unfortunately, I've got my auto insurance due, my power bills due, my water bills due, my rent's due, internet bills coming due, and I don't know what I'm going to do, you guys. So if you would like to support this channel, I really could use your help. Please make a one-time contribution to www.paypal.me/TheMorgile or recurring contribution through Patreon at www.patreon.com/TheMorgile. God bless you guys. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, spread the word, spread the world, and peace out, everybody.
Make the earth shake. Make the earth shake. Rock on. Make the earth shake. Make the earth shake.